In this video, I want to talk about the 1985 film Back to the Future and the 1986 film Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Back to the Future was the highest grossing film of 1985. Interestingly, the second highest grossing film of 1985 was Teen Wolf, also starring Michael J. Fox. Ferris Bueller's Day Off was also a big hit in 1986 and is one of my all-time favorite movies. Today, I want to talk about what these films can teach us about standing up for ourselves. In Back to the Future, we are introduced to the character of George McFly, who engages in the highly underrated hobbies of science fiction writing and being a peeping Tom. George McFly is the archetypal nerd who does not believe in himself, is overly concerned with what people think of him, and allows people to push him around. We can see that in 1955, Biff is a bully who loves to target George McFly and often demands him to do his homework. We can see that in the original 1985 at the start of the film, that by some strange twist of fate, that Biff is now George's supervisor who demands that George type up his reports for him. While I think it's highly unlikely that George and Biff would have followed a similar career path, the movie shows us that George has been putting up with Biff's bullying tactics for at least 30 years. Just like in real life, some people allow others to push them around for their whole life and never stand up for themselves. Later in the movie, George lays out Biff in 1955, and because of this one event, his life and the lives of his family turns out much better in the alternate 1985 compared with the original 1985. It always makes me laugh that because George knocked out Biff 30 years earlier, that now Biff has become completely subservient to George and spends his time waxing the McFly's cars and acting like George's personal lapdog. This is certainly not realistic and is taken too far, but it is done in a very funny way. In Ferris Bueller's Day Off, the character I want to focus on is Ferris's best friend, Cameron Fry. Like Ferris, he has taken the day off from school. But unlike Ferris, who wants to take the day off for pleasure, Cameron has taken the day off because he is legitimately sick, or at least he thinks he is. Cameron is someone who might be considered to be suffering from health anxiety, or be considered a hypochondriac.
He's the only guy I know who feels better when he's sick.
I always like that line, and I assume what Ferris meant is that it is less physically and mentally exhausting to be genuinely sick than to worry yourself into a sickness. So, when Cameron is legitimately sick, it is actually a relief for him because he doesn't have to stress himself out in order to make himself sick. At least that was my take anyway. Although we never see Cameron's father in the film, it becomes apparent that he is the biggest bully in Cameron's life. We learn throughout the film that Cameron's father is a harsh disciplinarian who values order, cleanliness, his Ferrari, and standing over Cameron. We can also see that although Ferris is Cameron's best friend, that Ferris does tend to bully Cameron into things that he doesn't necessarily want to do, with Cameron eventually submitting to Ferris's requests. We see this at the start of the film, where Ferris bugs Cameron into coming over to his house to pick him up.
If you're not over here in 15 minutes, you can find a new best friend.
He insists that Cameron make a phony phone call to the school principal,
Dad, Ronnie,
in order to get Ferris's girlfriend Sloane out of school so she can accompany Ferris and Cameron on a day out in the city of Chicago. We also see in this scene that Cameron is not totally spineless like George McFly, and if pushed, will stand up for himself. At least to Ferris anyway.
Look, don't ask me to participate in your stupid crap if you don't like the way I do it.
But we also see that Ferris has a smooth yet manipulative influence over Cameron, which he uses in order to convince Cameron to take out the 1961 Ferrari belonging to Cameron's father. By the end of the film, although we never see it, we are led to believe that Cameron has finally decided to stand up to his father, probably prompted by a combination of the repressed rage he has been harboring towards his father and the reality that he is going to butt heads with him anyway over the wreckage of his father's pride and joy. While Cameron does stand up to Ferris throughout the film, I really admire how Cameron assertively puts Ferris in his place towards the end of the film. we also see that Ferris is ultimately a good friend too, by offering to take the rap for the wrecked Ferrari. But we see this transition in Cameron at that moment that shows us that he will no longer be afraid of his old man, and that it's now or never if he is going to take a stand against him. What can we learn from these films? One lesson Back to the Future is trying to teach us is that if we stand up for ourselves, we will ultimately be more respected by other people. Standing up to Biff also gave George a new-found confidence, where in 1955 he was afraid to show Marty his science fiction writing for fear of what Marty might think, and in the alternate 1985, after receiving his newly published book, George exclaims to Marty,
"Like I've always told you, you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything."
I thought this was a really nice touch. This also tells us that over the years, George continued to pursue his interest and eventually became a successful science fiction writer, instead of resigning himself to a mundane job and life that we see George living at the start of the film. He has also become a strong leader of the family, which is why his kids Dave and Linda have followed his lead and also become successful. And Marty at least somehow got that 4x4. In the end, George's wife Lorraine is very much in love with him because he is a man who goes after what he wants, provides her an exciting life, and ultimately because she respects him. According to Ferris Bueller,
You can't respect somebody who kisses your ass. Just doesn't work.
if you don't stand up for yourself, you will ultimately be disrespected by others and walked over by them in your life. It might seem that by bending over backwards for people, trying to make them happy, that they would be appreciative, but I have found the exact opposite to be true. For the person who doesn't stand up for themselves, it may be hard to believe, but let me ask, how has this philosophy worked for you so far? It is certainly nerve-wracking to stand up for yourself initially, but once you begin to do so, you will ultimately gain more respect from others, and you will find that you will begin to live your life more authentically, doing what you want to do and not turning yourself into something that you are not simply to please others. Standing up for yourself will also make others think twice before attempting to cross your boundaries in the future.